This is the story of King Thrushbeard. Once upon a time, there lived a king who had a daughter so beautiful beyond all measure. But she was also vain and arrogant, that no suitor in the land was good enough for her. One by one, she ridiculed them and sent them away. One day, the king prepared a great banquet and invited every eligible bachelor from near and far. They were marshalled in a long row according to their rank and standing. First came the kings, then the grand dukes, then the princes, the earls, the barons, and the gentry. Subsequently, the king's daughter was led through the ranks, but to every single suitor she had some objection to make. One was too fat, she said. One was too tall. The third was too short, the fourth was far too pale, the fifth too red, and so on. She was sure to give each suitor a snide remark. She made herself especially merry over a good king who stood quite high up in the row and whose chin had grown a little crooked. "Well," cried she, "ha ha ha! Look at his chin! It looks like a thrush's beak!" And from that time he got the name of King Thrushbeard. The old king, her father, grew more and more angry, and seeing his daughter was wrongfully mocking every single suitor out there, made a promise in front of all who gathered that the princess should have for her husband the very first beggar that came to the castle doors. Not a few days had passed when a minstrel came and sang beneath the window, trying to earn a small handout. When the king heard him, he said, "Let him up!" So the minstrel in his dirty, ragged clothes came in and sang before the king and his daughter. And when he finished, the king said, "Oh, I liked your song so much that I will give you my daughter for a wife." The king's daughter took fright, but the king said, "I have taken an oath to give you to the very first beggar, and I will keep it." All she could say was in vain. The priest was brought, and she had to let herself be wedded to the fiddler right there on the spot. When that was done, the king said, "Now, it is not proper for you, a beggar woman, to stay any longer in my palace. You may just go away with your husband." The beggar man led her by the hand, and she was obliged to walk away on foot with him. When they came to a large forest, she asked, "To whom does that beautiful forest belong?" "It belongs to King Thrushbeard. If you had taken him, it would have been yours." "Oh, unhappy girl that I am! If I had but taken King Thrushbeard!" Afterwards, they came to a vast meadow, lined with exquisite flowers and cherry trees. She asked, "And to whom does this beautiful green meadow belong?" "It belongs to King Thrushbeard. If you had taken him, it would have been yours." "Oh, unhappy girl that I am! If I had but taken King Thrushbeard!" Then they came to a large town, and she wearily asked again, "To whom does this fine, large town belong?" "It belongs to King Thrushbeard as well. If you had taken him, would have been yours. Oh, unhappy girl that I am, if I had but taken King Thrushbeard. It does not please me, said the fiddler, to hear you always wishing for another husband. Am I not good enough for you? The girl silently looked away from him with pride. At last they came to a very little hut, and she said, Oh, goodness, what a small house! Oh, to whom does this miserable, mean hovel belong? The fiddler answered, This is my house, and yours. Here we shall live together. Where are the servants? Said the king's daughter. What servants? Answered the beggar man. You must yourself do what you wish to have done. Now, go and make a fire and start cooking. I'm hungry and I'm quite tired. But the king's daughter knew nothing about lighting fires or cooking. So the beggar man had to lend a hand himself to get anything fairly done. When they had finished their scanty meal, they went to bed. But her new husband forced her to get up quite early the next morning to look after the house. For a few days they lived in this way, as well as might be. But then, sure enough, they came to the end of their provisions. Then the man said, Wife, we cannot go any longer eating and drinking here and earning nothing. You must weave baskets. He went out, cut some willows and brought them home. At first she cried, but then, when her new husband would not show sympathy, she began to weave, wounding her delicate hands as she tried to bend the tough willows. The man's heart softened as he saw his new wife struggle in such a way. I see that this will not do, said the man. You had better spin. Perhaps you can do that better. So, obediently, she sat down and tried to spin, but the hard thread soon cut her soft fingers so much that the blood ran down her hands. Oh, said the man, you are fit for no sort of work. I have made a bad bargain with you. Now, I will try to make business with pots or an earthenware. You must sit in the marketplace and sell the ware. Alas, thought she, if any of the people from my father's kingdom come to the market and see me sitting there selling, oh, how they will mock me. But her fears were of no use. She simply had to yield to her husband's order. The only other option was to die of hunger. Well, it might come as a surprise, but for the first time she succeeded well in this task, for the people in the market were glad to buy the wares of such a good-looking woman. In fact, they paid her whatever she asked. Many even gave her the money and left the pots with her as well. The husband and wife survived for quite a while on what she had earned that day, but when their stocks began to deplete, the husband bought a lot of new crockery. With this, the woman sat down at the corner of the marketplace, as before, and set out the ware all around her, ready for sale. But suddenly there came a drunken soldier galloping along, and he rode right amongst the pots, so that each and every item broke into 1,000 tiny pieces. She began to weep, as she did not know what to do. Alas, what will happen to me? Cried she. What will my husband say to this? With a heavy heart she ran home and told him of the misfortune. Who would seat herself at the corner of the marketplace with crockery? Said the man. Well, you can stop your crying. I see very well that you cannot do any ordinary work. I have been to our king's palace and asked them to find you a place to work as a kitchen maid. In that way you will get your food for nothing." So alas, the king's daughter was now a kitchen maid and had to be at the cook's beck and call and do the dirtiest work in the kitchen. In both her pockets she fastened a little jar in which she took home her share of the leavings, and upon this they lived. Well, it so happened that the wedding of the king's eldest son was to be celebrated. So the poor woman went up and placed herself by the door of the hall to catch sight of the ceremony. When all the candles were lit, and people, each more beautiful than the other, entered, and all was full of pomp and splendor, she thought of her own life with a sad heart. She cursed the pride and haughtiness which had humbled her and brought her to such great poverty. All at once the king's son entered, clothed in velvet and silk, and gold chains about his neck, and when he saw the beautiful woman standing by the door, he seized her by the hand, and would have danced with her, but she refused, and shrank with fear, for she saw that it was in fact King Thrushbeard himself, her suitor, whom she had driven away with such scorn. Her struggles were of no avail, for he drew her into the hall. As they entered, however, the string which held up her pockets broke, and the jars inside fell down and smashed, and the scraps she had been gathering that day scattered all about the room. Oh, and when the wedding guests saw it, there arose great laughter and derision. She felt so ashamed that she would rather have been 1,000 fathoms below the ground than in that hall. At once, tears streaming down her eyes, she sprang to the door and would have run away, but on the stairs a man caught her and brought her back. When she looked at him, it was King Thrushbeard again. He said to her kindly, "Princess, do not be afraid. I and the fiddler who has been living with you in that wretched hovel are one. For love of you, I disguised myself. I also was the soldier who'd rode through the crockery. I had done this all to humble your proud spirit and punish you for the insolence with which you mocked me." The princess wept bitterly and said, "I have done great wrong, and I'm not worthy to be your wife." But he said, "Be comforted. The evil days are past. Now we will celebrate our wedding." Then the maid-in-waiting came and dressed her in the most splendid clothing, and her father and his whole court came and wished her happiness in her marriage with King Thrushbeard. Their joy now began in earnest, and of course they lived on in happiness for the rest of their days. The end.